Light your candles, put on some spooky music, and grab a big old bucket of Halloween candy because we're about to get creepy. SCPs are well known for being pretty creepy and disturbing, but most of the stuff we discuss here has to do with actual entries. Today we're going to read between the lines and hope to get to the bottom of some Foundation mysteries. There are so many conflicting tales and accounts that it's impossible to prove a theory right or wrong, but we're going to do our best anyways. Some theories might be ridiculous, and others might be so obvious they hurt. Regardless of veracity or likelihood, let's talk about some horror theories. Hello horror heads, and welcome back to the scariest channel on YouTube, Top 5 Scary Videos. I'm your horror host, Keegan Hughes, and today we're going to be taking a look at the top 5 SCP Horror Theories. If you're down to clown with the Foundation, make sure to check out our top 5 scary SCP Foundation's videos playlist right over here. Gnarly, let's get theorizing. Coming in at number 5, SCP-173's True Origins. The first SCP, a classic, the Peanut. There's a lot of history and controversy surrounding this large legume-shaped lad. Of course, the image that 173 was based on originally had nothing to do with SCP. It was actually a piece of installation art by Japanese artist Izumi Kato. The picture of a strange humanoid with a painted face looking over its shoulder from the corner of a dingy bathhouse room really affected people, causing them to think very creepy thoughts. Good work, Izumi Kato. Eventually, the SCP Wiki got permission to use the image on their site as long as nobody used the image for commercial purposes or contacted the artist, etc. All in all, a good deal, especially if the Foundation gets to use the photograph of a piece of art so formative to the SCP community. However, this raises some new questions and queries. Why does it act that way if it was originally just a piece of art? Why didn't the Foundation just find a different image to use? Why does 173 keep changing in all the SCP games? Well, I don't know if I can answer all of these questions, but I can present this theory. SCP-173 was actually created by members of Are We Cool Yet, the anomalous art collective pervasive throughout the wiki. Are We Cool Yet is a group of artists, or I suppose at this point a wide variety of vaguely connected artists, that make anomalous art and put it out into the world. Often it can be harmless and just freaks people out a little bit, leading to the Foundation having to contain it to prevent widespread awareness of the anomalies. Other times, these works of art can be dangerously destructive and hard to handle. 173 is just such an installation. We know that it only moves when you don't look at it, and if it gets close enough to you, it'll snap your neck. Consider this. What if somebody at AWCY made a piece that didn't let you look away? It's art that you can't afford to let out of your sight. Wouldn't that make so much sense? Those meta lunatics. Coming in at number 4, Dr. Wondertainment is more than they seem. There are plenty of recurring characters across the SCP world. Doctors, researchers, religious leaders, and more. But one who seems to show up in more varied places than anyone else is the fabled Dr. Wondertainment, creator of the Little Misters line of anomalies, developer of anomalous snacks of all shapes, sizes, and flavors, possible O5 council member. But is Dr. Wondertainment a singular entity, or is it a group of wonderful and whimsical researchers, developers, and creators? Either way, there's a sinister underside to this Willy Wonka-esque organization. While most of the anomalies created by the Wondertainment enterprise are kinda goofy, if not hard to contain, there are many that slip through the cracks and cause real damage. Sure, a lot of the Wondertainment line is developed with the express purpose of entertaining children. A lot of these toys and gadgets do end up being much more dangerous than other, more explicitly scary SCPs. I suppose that's the risk you run when using something created by a reality bender, or a group of reality benders. That's up to interpretation. Are all SCPs reliant on Dr. Wondertainment's reality bending? Did group have something to do with the classic factory? All questions without solid answers. Wondertainment is a fascinating figure in the SCP universe and may be so much more than people assume. Is there malice behind that goofy exterior? What do you think? Coming in at number 3, SCP-096 has been terminated. Now wouldn't that be a relief? Although it took quite a while to make it happen. Hold on, I'm getting ahead of myself here. SCP-096 is an uber popular scary SCP. This pale, emaciated, lanky humanoid has a face that only a mother could love. Unfortunately, anyone who witnesses its visage will immediately be hunted down and killed by the creature. This goes for seeing it in person, in a photograph, or on video. Artists' renditions don't seem to have this effect though, thank goodness. For years, this SCP would escape containment, rip apart a few people, find a few others that saw its face on the way, and then return to its natural environment. 096's anomalous properties made it especially dangerous. It could run at insane speeds, take untold amounts of damage, and kill people with the utmost ease. Add in the fact that anyone who sees its face becomes a new target, and you have a big problem on your hands. What if it made it to a city center? What if somebody took a picture and uploaded it online? This could cause a gigantic chain reaction leading to the deaths of many people. In the wiki entry, there is an audio log of an interview between a doctor and the captain of a team tasked with retrieving 096 after a containment breach. After hearing about all the damage 096 caused and all the lives it had ended, the doctor ends the interview with a formal request to the higher-ups of the Foundation. Terminate this thing as soon as possible. This goes against the SCP Foundation's principles. You're not securing, containing, and protecting something by killing it. But this doctor seemed to be very invested in the destruction of this demon. It isn't confirmed what happens next, as is the case in some situations where the SCP has been rendered dead or destroyed. However, this could be an example of an off-the-books termination. What if they did indeed deal with 096, but kept its containment procedures open in order to set a really high standard? A creature has to be at least as dangerous as 096 before anyone can really do anything about it, and I'm not sure if that makes me feel more or less safe than I did before. Coming in at number 2, the real Procedure 110 Montauk. Within the SCP Foundation, there is a procedure rumored to be so soul-crushing, so dark and violent, so horrible to behold that nobody's really allowed to remember it at all. Folks assigned to SCP-231 are hand-selected to be as obedient and psychologically stable as possible, and even then they're put in concealing helmets and giving voice changers so as to dehumanize them more and prevent any possible recognition by others involved. In order to work at the site that 231 is held at, staff are blindfolded, have their ears covered, and then they're carted around in no fewer than 7 forms of transportation to ensure maximum disorientation. After all is said and done, they're given amnestics anyways and some time off of work to recoup. No records of who has served on this project are kept, so what the hell is going on with this procedure then? Why is it so serious? What could possibly be so awful that all these additional requirements are put in place? Well, SCP-231 is a young female who was retrieved from a Scarlet King cult. It appears that she may be pregnant with the Scarlet King version of the Antichrist. By performing this brutal ritual known as Procedure 110 Montauk every day, the Foundation manages to keep the Scarlet King at bay. The terrible torture, the pain, the suffering, these all prevent the Scarlet King from entering our world, which is good because as soon as he enters, it's all over. But what if I told you it's all smoke and mirrors? What if the procedure wasn't the torture itself, but the appearance of torture? What if they put up all these barriers so nobody from the outside world would ever find out what's actually going on, and in reality they were just housing the girl and keeping her safe? Well, that isn't what the Foundation wants getting out, but it is a possibility. Instead of brutal redacted, maybe they're just giving her a snack and putting her to bed. If it's enough to keep the Scarlet King at bay, it's good enough for me. And finally at number 1, all 001 proposals are real. Oh boy, that's a doozy, isn't it? There are plenty of 001 proposals that scare the ever-living crap out of all sorts of people. There's the Gate Guardian, When Day Breaks, the Factory. There are lots of high-powered SCP proposals out there. Some of them are real, some of them aren't, and some of them exist just to throw people off the trail to finding the actual SCP-001. Some folks think that there is one true 001, and others think that there are a few. But what if they were all real? All of them. Just take a deep breath and consider that for a moment. Imagine the chaos, the utter lunacy that would unfold. Well, it's possible, isn't it? What's the scariest 001 proposal? I suppose it doesn't really matter if they're all real. Thankfully, these are just theories, conjecture, baseless as all hell, but they make you think, don't they? So, what'd you think of the video? Were you aware of these theories? Which ones sound the most legit, and do you think any are total bunk? Make sure you let me know down in the comments. Speaking of comments, let's take a look at some of your slimier ones from the top 5 scary bedtime stories to keep you up tonight. Jamie Forster says, reminds me of when I was a kid reading scary stories to tell in the dark to kids younger than me on the playground and scaring them half to death. Good times. Ah, memories. Now what story scared folks the most? Mercenary Tao says, can't sleep, clown will eat meat. Don't be silly, clowns don't eat people, they just chop them up in tiny little pieces and scatter them around the circus. Cinnamon Obscura says, happy October! It's the most wonderful time of the year. Oh, it absolutely is. I hope folks are celebrating as best they can. Carve a pumpkin, eat handfuls of Halloween candy, and be safe. I'm in the middle of my yearly horror movie marathon. So far, so good. Smiley Hugar says, I will sleep well, dreaming of clowns with hooks for hands that escape from prison hiding on a back road to hide in someone's back seat. Oh, so it's a pretty relaxing dream. And Jexer says, man, door, hand, hook, car door. Man, door, hand, hook, car door indeed. And that's all the time we have for today. Before I accept the world's sketchiest Craigslist job ad and meet up with the person without checking them out first, make sure to give this video a big thumbs up and subscribe for more interesting ideology. Thanks for watching, and I'll see you next time.